Hey guys, welcome to Fast Keto. I'm your host, Ketogenic Girl. Hey guys, welcome to Fast Keto. This episode is brought to you by Ketogenic Girl, and if you haven't picked up a copy of my brand new cookbook, Keto Essentials, head to Amazon today. It actually is 31% off. It's on sale right now, and it is everything that you need to know from a beginner to being advanced keto about getting the optimal results out of your ketogenic lifestyle. It explains everything about why keto works, how to test, how to interpret results, and lots of keto hacks to get you results quicker. It also has 150 of my most favorite decadent, rich, delicious keto recipes that are so nourishing and are so much fun to cook. Some of my favorite recipes like my keto pad thai, fettuccine alfredo, some of my favorite desserts like keto cookie dough. There are so many delicious treats and ways that you can make keto work for you. A lot of easy to find ingredients. I don't put a lot of hard to find ingredients in the recipes, and everything you can find at most supermarkets. I do a lot of traveling and I'm able to make these recipes just with basic ingredients from the store. So lots of delicious, tasty recipes. It's on sale, 31% off. Head to Amazon and look up Keto Essentials and get the cookbook. Leave me a review. I would love to hear what you think, and also tag me if you post any photos of the recipes. It's my favorite thing to see your creations based on my recipes. So that's Keto Essentials on Amazon. Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode. I am doing a deep dive today on the carnivore diet. I myself am super fascinated by it at the moment and have been doing a 7-day trial with it and posting and sharing about it. And I'm going to do a full-length episode just talking about some of my personal observations on it. But I want to have a bunch of guests on who really have way more expertise than I do on the carnivore diet. It's super new to me and I'm trying it out really just to understand it better. When I first heard about carnivore diet, I thought it was super crazy and crazy unhealthy, and I was really judgmental about it. And I even started hashtagging like green keto because I really believe so much that, we need to have fiber and a diet that's full of rich variety in vegetables. And I just want to learn. I want to grow all the time and always be learning new things. And so I wanted to try it out for myself after being inspired by some other friends and colleagues who've done it. And today I'm going to get the chance to chat with Danny Vega. He is a 220-pound raw power lifter from Miami, Florida. He has his master's degree in science in human performance from the University of Florida, and he worked with the national championship men's basketball team along with women's basketball, tennis, and golf programs. He went on to become the strength and conditioning coordinator for VCU basketball, helping to run the Rams to the 2007 conference champions and making it to the second round of the NCAA tournament. He also has meet bests of 640 squats in reps. I have no idea what I'm saying when I'm saying these words. 400 bench and 700 deadlift. I think those are really impressive numbers. I don't really have a reference point for them, but they sound super impressive. And for any of you who do a lot of lifting, you're probably really impressed right now. So I'm so stoked to have Danny on today. As I said, it's great to have people who have a lot more experience than I do, a lot more expertise about carnivore, and I think we're going to learn a lot from chatting with Danny. A few disclaimers. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice, as I am not a qualified healthcare provider. The information presented on this podcast is for educational purposes only. Ketogenic Girl is not qualified to provide medical advice. Consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to this podcast. Prior to beginning a ketogenic diet, you should undergo a full health screening with your physician to confirm that a keto diet is suitable for you and to rule out any conditions or contraindications that may pose risks or that are incompatible with a ketogenic diet. A keto diet may or may not be appropriate for you if you have any kind of health condition, whether known to you or unknown, so you must consult your physician to find this out. Anyone under the age of 18 should consult with their physician and their parents or legal guardian. Welcome, Danny. It's great to have you here today.
Hey, Vanessa. I'm happy to be here.
I am super pumped. I was posting this morning, reposting a really cool graphic that you did, and we got to chatting about carnivore, and I was like, we have to take this to the podcast because I think the biggest thing right now that I'm noticing is how controversial this diet is, and
my goodness, yes.
also how but also how incredibly fascinating it is. And I was just saying, in my intro, how when I first started seeing posts about carnivore keto, I was like, these people are crazy. Like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. You need your veggies. I'm all about green keto and all this stuff. And then I was really harshly judging it. And then I decided to try it for myself, actually, after having Dr. Ken Berry on the podcast and listening to more and more podcasts and starting to research. And I've been doing this 7-day trial this week, and I'm just absolutely blown away. And all I want to do now is learn more about it.
I'm so happy that you're having such a good experience early on, because some people actually, at the beginning, they go through like an adaptation similar to what you would go through with keto. They feel run down. And then there's other issues, because when you think about it, you're basically completely changing what you eat, and your gut biome may not be ready for that. I'll tell you, in my personal experience, I think some people might be surprised to know that, contrary to what you might think, and especially with women who are very concerned with things like constipation, it was quite the opposite for me the first week. And I chalked that up.
Literally the opposite.
Yeah. And I
we all know what that means.
Yeah, I was like, what the heck, and part of it was I was at the beginning, because I think I posted this when I posted that graphic, that I love being a carnivore, but I also love being in ketosis. So I was really, really at the beginning focusing on maintaining my older ratios of like 80% fat. And so there was just so much butter added to my meat and all this stuff. At the time, I had already been very fat adapted. I had already been like over a year and a half keto. I think that might have been part of it, but it also might have been the fact that I had to basically repopulate my gut biome with different bacteria. And now it's just like everything's good to go. We always get on this conversation at some point or another when we talk about keto. I don't know why.
Oh, I think it's like one of the most important things that we should talk about, because it's probably the main question that I get is everyone's like losing their minds about fiber. And what I thought was so interesting, from what I've now learned from several podcast interviews and research that I've done, that apparently like 90% or more of the meat that you eat just gets utilized by the body for the formation of new tissue. It gets broken down into the essential amino acids and others that we need. And when you're just bulking all the time with tons of fiber, you're having more bowel movements, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's a good thing, as opposed to having less of them. You're like, what I've heard is that, you're still going. It's just not as frequent as if you're eating tons of like raw, roughage every day.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are going to identify with what I'm going to say, because I know some people close to me that have this issue. Mm-hmm. You have soluble fiber and you have insoluble fiber. So soluble fiber is usually what you hear about when you think about fiber that's good for you. It's the one that is producing those short chain fatty acids that you need. It's helping with your gut microbiome. It's slowing down digestion. But then you have insoluble fiber that's the opposite. That's the roto-rooter. That's the stuff that's making things move faster. And it seems like in a lot of people, there's never, that balance is never there. So you'll have constipation, and then you'll have like IBS type symptoms, and it's never quite right. It's like you gotta get the right thing. And I think it comes back to, people are always trying to add things, because psychologically adding something to your diet is way more positive than taking things away. We're like, okay, my things aren't going right, let me add more fiber. And then the more you complicate these things, the more you have like all these variables to manage. And I find that, like, just like you said, meat is the ultimate elimination diet. You get rid of everything. It just simplifies everything. And it's just like me, who has decision fatigue, and I'm always like, what should I do? It makes it so much easier when you just pretty much eat mostly meat,
Absolutely. And that's been one of the biggest findings for me this week so far, is that it is an amazing elimination protocol, because if you just eat fresh meat, poultry, and fish, say for a week, even cut out the dairy as well, you can then see exactly what your body reacts to, because your body's never going to really react. I'm sure in some rare cases it does, but just to eating pure, healthy animal proteins, because our digestion, everything is set up to process them. But then you cut it back to that, and then you reintroduce, dairy or various carbs, and you can actually see, what your body reacts to, if it does at all. And I was telling you this, like I had been having a lot of inflammation the past couple of weeks, and I had originally cured my inflammation. I had colitis and really sore hands from going off of gluten. And just on the second day of doing carnivore keto with lots of meat and dairy, I was saying my ring went from not being able to put it on to flipping around so much that it kept hitting the screen while I was typing. And that's what actually jolted me, because I don't think I would have realized unless that had happened, how long it had been since my ring was that loose. And for the past several weeks, I had been eating tons and tons and tons of salad. Like, I don't know if it's because it's summer. I was also trying to get potassium in and all these things that I had been reading about. And I was just like eating tons of salad. And I'm not saying that it's the salad. I really need to test, but that's how this elimination protocol can help people as well. If they just want to go on it for even 3 days, 4 days, and just, then see how the body reacts when you reintroduce things one at a time, it could be so powerful to learn.
I totally agree. And I think that I said this when I first switched, because we didn't talk about this, but my first intro to this was my friend Brian, Keto Evangelist. Obviously, we'll all be together at KetoCon in a month. And he was like telling me, he's the type of guy, he's not like me. He doesn't like to do all these crazy experiments. So when he does one, I'm like, what is this? So he's like, and I love him because he's just so simple with it. He's like, he calls me and he's like, so I got an idea for an experiment. I'm like, what is it? He says, well, I know that I love salmon and I know that I love beef. So I think I'm just going to eat salmon and beef for a month. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do that with you. And I was already like on the carnivore train. Like in July, I had already heard an awesome interview with our friend Fahad, Keto Geek. He had interviewed Dr. Baker. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. And so the first month I got rid of the dairy and the pork too. And, I was having the occasional fat bombs with nut butters and stuff. And then exactly like you said, when I introduced some of these things back, I was so sad because I was like, this actually affects me. Like some of this stuff, like the nut butters, almonds, peanuts. The only thing that now that I can eat safely is peely nuts and macadamia nuts. And those two, I can make them into like a nut butter and it won't be an issue.
Yeah.
But the other nuts were bad. And then the other thing that I found was if I eat too much pork at a time, and it's not bacon, with the exception of when I first went keto, I had been on a low fat diet for a long time. And so I had a plate of bacon and I drank all the grease. It was disgusting.
Yeah. We've all been there.
I was like,
dude, we've all had that moment.
I was
You're like, I can eat this? Like,
all this turkey bacon crap, all these egg whites and all this other crap. And I had it, and I had like a bacon aversion for weeks. But I can eat bacon now, but like...
was just saying the other day, I think salmon might be the perfect food because it's such a wild salmon. I mean, you look at it, the healthy fats in it, and then just the ratio, of fat and protein. I think you could probably eat just salmon for the rest of your life and be in total optimal health.
Oh, I agree.
If you were someone who's doing carnivore. So that's cool that you guys started out with, the beef and salmon. But just to go back to the start, can you tell us what a carnivore diet is? And is there a difference for you between carnivore and keto carnivore?
Yeah, that was another thing that you and I talked about, because I think that it's interesting to see, first of all, there's different personalities and different people that I think everyone that's advocating for it is necessary, because you're going to have people that are going to come at you with all types of, questions and reasons why not to do it. Some will say that I can't do it because it's too expensive. Some will say that I can't do it because, different reasons. Or like, I don't want to track. That turns them off with keto to track at the beginning. And so what you'll see is a lot of people just say, eat all the meat you want until you're full and just eat. Some people do really well with, I know small women who are eating, 3,000-4,000 calories in meat and just doing fantastic. And then some people who do that and eat like crazy amounts of meat with no regard to ratios or anything, they do poorly. Their blood sugar goes up. They feel bad. And I know I have a friend who did this for 3 months and she gave it all she had. She was like, she's like, you know what? It's just not for me. And it's not going to be for everybody. But I think, the best of both worlds. I mean, it's like, who got me here? Who was the one who did all these amazing things for me? It was keto. She's always been there. She's always been so good to me. And I'm not just going to leave her behind. It's interesting because even when I have ventured off into like extremely high protein land and, with the fat lower, I've always been in ketosis, but I haven't quite felt as well as I do when I'm just making sure that I'm a little bit mindful of my ratios. So
what are your ratios?
So right now they're about I think it's 68% fat and 30% protein. So yeah, that's right now. If I look at my...
pretty much what I've been doing, just from eating and kind of intuitively, but also with doing like a 1-to-1.
Yeah, 1-to-1. That's me. I'm at 1-to-1 protein to fat in grams. And then my protein is at 1 times my lean body mass. So right now, since I'm in maintenance, it's, just a little bit higher calorie than it would be if I was trying to cut. But on that, subject, I've definitely evolved in the way I think, because last year my goal was to hit 6% body fat. And after a few months of kind of struggling, we got my protein all the way down to 75 grams at the end. And I was under 100 grams for months, 225 pounds. And I got down to 6.5% body fat and I gained 6 pounds of lean mass somehow. And I did great.
When you were doing that 75 grams of protein, what was the fat and carb?
So the carbs started at 20 total carbs when I started. And it got down to 12. And then the protein started at 120 and it got down to 75. And then the fat started at 250 grams. And at the very, very end, it was down to 205.
So it was just like a ketogenic,
exactly,
full-on ketogenic diet.
Full-on ketogenic. It was wake up in the morning, have a fatty coffee, work out, have a post-workout meal of ground beef and fat bombs, and then, another keto coffee for lunch. And then dinner was always a huge salad, 5 ounces of greens with rotating the oils between MCT oil, avocado oil, olive oil, and then some meat, and then maybe some nuts, and then just kind of subtract things as I went on. And we did great. And I worked with clients that I've done that way, and it's been awesome. So we know that protein is there are proteins and there are amino acids that are glucogenic and insulinogenic, and there are same thing with carbs. So if you look at it from that standpoint, carbs and protein a lot of the time are going to basically work against ketosis, even though protein most of the time is not as strong of an effect. But what I find is that when you remove the carbohydrates, and more importantly, when you remove the plants, it's a much higher amount of protein that you can add than the carbs that you take away.
Yes. Okay. I exactly want to zero in on that. I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but I really want to talk about that, because it's exactly what I noticed for myself. Because one of the reasons the first reason I didn't want to try carnivore is because I thought it was crazy not to eat, fibrous greens. But the other one is, in the past, when I always talk about, you have to get your protein threshold dialed in, and whenever I would go above my protein threshold, I would get kicked out of ketosis and I would get a higher blood sugar.
Yep.
And that's one of the reasons I didn't want to try it. But then I thought, after doing the research, listening to Ken Berry and how he cycles kind of in and out of keto to carnivore keto, this week I cut out all the carbs to 0. I mean, there's some trace carbs.
Same here.
That you just can't avoid, but pretty much 0.
Eggs have them, sometimes a heavy cream.
Yeah. But then got that down to 0. And then I set about 120 grams of protein and 120 grams of fat as some kind of guideline of maybe I won't go above that. And I'm still in ketosis. I haven't gotten kicked out, and my blood sugar is totally steady. And it's a little higher than it was on keto, but I didn't get kicked out for the first time with, taking the carbs away. So I find that fascinating.
Oh yeah. Well, this is amazing for me with the blood sugar, because what I notice is I recommend you do is start testing postprandial blood sugar. Your mind is going to be blown. Because my blood sugar was always in the low 70s. And then what I found was that it started to become the low 80s. So 5 to 10 points higher than it used to be, faster.
Exactly.
But then my postprandial blood sugar, I started with having 1 pound of meat, testing at an hour and 2 hours, having 24 ounces, all the way up to 32. Actually, it was a little bit over 2 pounds of meat, 32 ounces of meat, like, and an hour and 2 hours later. And it's like, my blood sugar doesn't care. My blood sugar after I eat is like, yeah, so what? It's like 84, 86, 84, 80. And it's like always the same. And I'm just like, this is the most stable thing I've ever seen. Who cares if your fasted blood sugar is a little bit higher? If your postprandial numbers, it's obvious that your sugar is not raising it's not having an immediate effect from the protein you eat. And that's actually kind of one of the things where it's like, okay, number one, you want to, and then also just like with keto, over time, you'll probably see your numbers drop again, because now randomly, even though my ratios have been typically higher protein than they were before, now, recently my fasted blood sugar is back down like a lot of days in the mid to low 80s or in the 70s. And this week I've had a few days in the 70s, and the ones that I've had like higher, it's because the day before I've had like, if I make my sons, because my sons are keto too, and like they're mostly carnivore and they're keto, but they love full fat yogurt with like a half a scoop of protein, like a chocolate protein. And so if I make it for them, sometimes I get the hankering and I'll have it the same. And I'll have it too. And I'll notice that those days, the days after this, that I'll have a little bit higher blood sugar, but it's not a big deal. It's not a big difference.
Right. And that shows really good insulin sensitivity.
Yeah. I think
from this diet as well, which is amazing.
Yeah. And the other thing, because I did a 50,000 meter row 2 Sundays ago for one of my favorite charities, which you'll probably, Heifer International, highly recommend. If there's a charity that you want to look into, it's them, because what you do is your donations contribute to, you buy livestock for women in like South Africa. And not only do they get like chickens that produce eggs, and then all the women in the village like can benefit from that, and the goats and the lamb and all that, but then they get education, which keeps them safe from being tricked into like sex slavery and all those terrible things. I talked to Peter Defty, who's, when it comes to fueling for endurance. Are you testing yourself?
No.
Caught me. That's so awesome. No, I love it. I love it.
I'm listening to every word, but I just had like a couple of hard-boiled eggs like at 5, and I just wanted to I wanted to be testing like half hour, 2 hours.
You know what? I love it because I'm like, she's crazy like me. I love it. It's like, welcome. My people. I'm with my people.
Exactly.
So yeah, I talked to Peter Defty and I asked him, how should I fuel for this? I haven't had carbohydrate in so long. And, he advised me to have carbohydrate, and I listened to him, because he knows his stuff. So I had 200 grams of carbohydrate. I haven't had that much in like 2 years, the night before.
Yeah.
And then the day of, because, 50,000 meters, that's 31 miles of rowing. I woke up the next morning with my blood sugar a little bit higher, but, I did 3 rowing workouts, and by the end of the 3rd rowing workout, my blood sugar was like 68 and my ketones were at 4.4. So that showed that those carbs, if you ever have to do, and you look at it from a healthy standpoint where you're fueling yourself, you're not like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have carbs and I'm going to go eat, crap food. This was like, no, sweet potato mixed in with eggs and stuff.
68 is what I just got, by the way.
That's a good number. And
sorry.
Had the hard boiled eggs.
It's just really random.
And how postprandial? How long? So it's been an hour for you?
Yeah, about an hour since I had it.
So it's like it's just
hasn't really moved up. And I mean, the egg is just the perfect food. That's why I wanted to specifically test the egg, because it's so well balanced, just like salmon, like that could be a baseline to test the other foods postprandially this week. But yeah, didn't mean to cut you off there.
No. I listened to I just heard it. I'm like, I know that sound.
Yeah, I know that sound.
So I think just like with keto, you can tell, it depends on your audience, right? Because if you're talking to someone who is for some reason basically putting it on you to like prove to them why this is good, you're going to basically try to sell it to them. Like, look, this is how easy it is. You can go, get some cheap meat and it's going to be okay. And, you don't have to worry about ratios. But if you're really trying to perfect things, then I think it's important, especially because I had some nutritionists and dietitian people that like unfollowed me when I went carnivore. And I was like, dang it, I don't want you to think, I consider myself someone who, I have a master's in science, like I am a scientific person, don't dismiss me just because I'm just eating meat. I know it sounds crazy. And so at the same time, if you really want to perfect it, there's a few things that I think people should look at. Number one, try to, keep ketogenic ratios. I think that, obviously the typical is the Finney and Volek, 65 to 80% fat.
Yes.
The other thing is, I don't think there's anything wrong with really trying to focus in on micronutrients. And if you want to just shut up everybody, shut up the vegans and really just quiet them, tell them that I eat grass-fed meat only, and I eat liver and I eat fish. What do you got for me? Because there's nothing you can say, because
Right.
liver is like the perfect food. I eat liverwurst. My goals are always to have at least once or twice a week where I'm consuming organ meats, because the iron,
That's excellent.
Yeah, the vitamin A. And it's liverwurst and Braunschweiger for people who are not as adventurous as me, because I really don't care. I'll ground up liver, kidney, heart, and I'll make burgers out of it. And my wife will think I'm disgusting.
You make pate. It's delicious.
You can make pate too. And and Braunschweiger and liverwurst, honestly, they're very mild tasting. And I like to cut them up into slices and fry them in butter. And it's delicious.
I got to try that. My husband loves liverwurst.
Oh,
I think it's really important what you're saying about, doing it correctly. And it really isn't for everyone. And the biggest misconception I think that I want to put out there is that just because I'm doing it personally doesn't mean that I'm expecting anyone else to do it, or that I'm trying to convince anyone else to do it. I just want to try it for myself. And I'm trying it because I was super against it. And I think the best way to learn is to try something, to understand it better. And I've just been really astonished by some of the things. And I think I've learned this week that I'm extremely, extremely carb sensitive. And that's one of the biggest things that I've learned from this, is that for me, it's possible that even 20 grams of really nutrient dense carbs are still too much for me. And it may just be that I need to change the fuel mix a little bit and make some adaptations and maybe play around with my ratios. But that's part of the fun is, experiment yourself, try different things yourself so that you find what works personally for you, because we're all so different. And, some people the thing that I was posting about a lot this week was dairy. Because I cut out gluten all these years ago. I had ulcerative colitis and I had a lot of swelling, chronic inflammation. And in the past few weeks, it had come back. And I just thought it must be dairy, because I've been eating a lot of dairy lately. And I kind of knew it. I was I got to stop soon, but it's so good. But and this week I was carnivore, it's a good time for that. Lots of meat and dairy. So I tried it. And the crazy thing was, when I saw how much my inflammation went down, I had added dairy.
Oh my gosh.
And
crazy.
The only change I made is taking away all the carbs, and all the inflammation was gone. So it just blew my mind, because dairy is so inflammatory for so many people. I just assumed that it was for me. My husband's also intolerant. And I was correlation is not causation. And I had assumed in the past that times when I was eating dairy, it was causing inflammation. But for me, it isn't. And I think that's awesome, because I love eating cheese and, especially heavy cream. I think it's just so cool that we can try these things for ourselves and then figure out what works best for you as an individual.
Yeah. And for me, what I'll say too is that I totally agree with you, first of all, about, not trying to make this something hey, you guys should do this. And unfortunately, for some reason at this point, people look to me to see what I'm doing. I don't know why, but okay. And they look at me and I'm like, guys, I can't tell you how many times I've said, listen, this is what I'm doing. If you want to do what I'm doing, I want to encourage you to get some baselines, what you're doing now. Get baselines with blood sugar and ketones and how your workouts are feeling, other subjective things, and then start, adding the protein, taking away the vegetables and the plant matter, and see what happens. And then you can make a decision. But when you add them back in, I'll say on adding things back in, I think that the safe things for me are obviously low sugar fruit like avocado and zucchini. Those things. Because if you understand what Dr. Eid talks about, Dr. Georgia Eid is one of our favorite human beings on earth. She's just amazing, because I read,
I think, half her website today after you sent it to me.
Yeah, isn't she amazing? And she's a psychiatrist. And so for that reason, we follow her. But she talks about, just when you look at defenses and how plants protect themselves, fruits, they want you to eat them, because in a typical world, not the world that we live in now, because we throw away the seeds. but typical animals will eat the fruit and then poop out the seeds and then here we go, we continue and we live on. But if we're eating the actual seeds and the nuts, that's where the phytochemicals are. That's where the phytates and the anti-nutrients that block absorption are. And so adding back the avocados and the zucchinis and things like that, you want some color, you want some variety, that's great. Or if you want to have the vegetables, make sure you cook them in animal fat to not only for the absorption, but to try to get rid of some of that stuff. Yeah. And then the other thing, I just wanted to add one more thing is with the dairy. For me, I absolutely also love cheese and dairy. I have to monitor myself because my problem is not so much that I can't handle it. It's that when I eat it, I want all the cheese. And it's like, I want cheese to be the accoutrement. I don't want cheese to become the main. And sometimes if I start eating too much cheese, I need to after a few days, I'm like, okay, Danny, just back it up because half your plate is now cheese, and that's not how it's supposed to be.
Do you think it could be because there's carbs in it?
It could be the carbs, and I don't know what it is, but the more cheese I eat, the more cheese I want to eat.
I think that's universal. I mean, cheese is just the best thing ever, and so for me, it's like heavy cream.
I can't imagine in Europe with the cheese that you get.
Oh, it's so spoiled here. There's all these little cheese shops, and then they have truffle cheese, which is my absolute favorite.
Is that with the actual truffle in it?
It is. It is. And truffle gives you that umami, which, stimulates all these neuroexcitotoxins in the brain. And I know it when I'm having it that it's creating this, exciting effect in my brain. And yet, Hey guys, just taking a really quick break to talk about the 28-day Ketogenic Girl Challenge. If you're interested in doing a ketogenic diet for yourself, it's a great place to start. I teach you everything about how to follow a keto diet to get yourself into nutritional ketosis. And it includes 28 days of meal plans. It comes with weekly shopping lists, how to interpret results, how to test yourself, a complete guide to getting started on keto. If you've been keto for a while and you're just not getting the results that you want to in terms of your health or fat loss, or you are brand new to keto, the 28-day challenge is a great option because it also comes with my free coaching and support in our members Facebook group, and you can post any questions that you have about the meal plans, about keto, and I am there supporting you. We have an amazing community in our group. I like to call it the happiest place on earth because everybody in there is so excited about following keto, about having found something that really works well for them. And everyone in there is just so kind, caring, generous, and supportive. And it's a really fun place to be and hang out. So if you'd like more info on it, you can find it at ketogenicgirl.com. And it's the 28-day Ketogenic Girl Challenge. And now back to our interview. It's weird because I have had that issue with myself in the past, but doing it with the carnivore, I don't. Just this week, I'm only speaking about this week because it's the only experience I've had with it. If I have it with, lots of beef and salmon, I get so full so fast. And I want to talk about some of the benefits that you've experienced with doing kind of a carnivore keto diet, because for me, the big things that I've learned this week for me is the inflammation. The second major thing is just the satiety. And I thought that I had that on keto, but this is next level. I guess I was maybe more of a volume eater. So I thought I had to have big plates and, big salads and things to feel full. And this is I'll have a small plate of just whatever the macros are, whatever that meat is, and I get full so fast. And then the thought of food is repulsive. I just have never had that except after Thanksgiving when you're if I look at food, I'm gonna, I just don't even want to think about it anymore. And it's this food peace feeling where I'm do I want more sausage? Heck no. Do I want more cheese? Heck no. Because I'm so full. And that's this satiety that I've never experienced. But then if I think about having something with carbs, for me, dark chocolate or, salad or something with dressing, then I'm oh yeah, we can make room for that. But yeah. It's the fact that you can only have the carnivore food and thinking about another piece of steak or whatever is just I'm my body is done. It's full. It's satisfied. And that's the coolest thing for me has just been that satiety. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I've actually put a lot of thought into this because, I used to kind of balk at the fact when people would say, and here's my thing. It's because back in the day, if you would have seen me last year, I was on a mission to tell people I see a lot of fellow meatheads like me who are like, you need all the protein. And I kind of don't like hearing that. That's why my name is KetoCounterCulture, because I don't like people just saying things without thinking about them. I was always like, fat is where it's at. Fat, you feel so full with fat, and it makes sense. But I've found that higher fat, like 80% fat and 15% protein, versus where I'm at now, 67, 68%, with the protein higher, it's almost like the higher protein combined with the lower fat, where the fat is still high, very high, is like, it's like synergistic. It's like they work together to make you feel way more full. We know like there's like 3 different ways, right, that we feel full. We have our hunger hormones, we have ghrelin and leptin. We have like mechanical processes, like where the stretch of the stomach. So I could get that because like the salad, that's what the salad does. You're relying really on that one piece to make you feel full.
Yes.
And then the third one is that nutrient. It's kind of like a thermostat where you're like, your body's like, okay, I'm going to tell all of these different things are telling the body if you're full or if you're not full. How much is the stomach stretching? What's it doing into leptin and ghrelin? And then the last one is like, how nutrient dense is it? And meat, people still to this day, and I've been talking about this for months and months and months, they're like, what? Meat has more vitamins than vegetables? I'm like, yeah, guys, it has more vitamins and they're more bioavailable.
A lot more.
Yeah, and that's where people are like, it blows their mind. And so I think that you're relying on all 3 more evenly when you eat meat only versus eating plants, because you sacrifice a little bit of the nutrient stat because you may not be absorbing them as much, and then you also you sacrifice possibly maybe what it's doing in leptin and ghrelin and the protein too, like the amino acids and all of that. You're basically, your body's like, man, I got what I need. And so that's the first one. I totally agree with you. Satiety is much better. The second one for me, I couldn't believe the craving control was the difference. I was telling people the difference between keto and carnivore keto, what I'm doing now, was greater to me. And I might just be because I exaggerate a lot. The difference between those two in like managing cravings was greater than it was between the standard diet and keto. And I don't know why.
I had the same experience. Yeah.
How crazy is that? Like it's just like, I thought keto was good and this is better.
I was doing a podcast yesterday with this incredible woman, Bitten Johnson. She's with Diet Doctor, and she explained it really well. She actually just started doing carnivore keto, which is so funny because it randomly came up at the end of our discussion. She's like, yeah, I'm doing it right now because I'm following like Ted Naiman, and she's this incredible like sugar addiction specialist living in Sweden. And she's like, oh, I don't have to cook that much, and it's super easy. And she is a recovering sugar addict herself, which I am also. And she explained it so well that your brain over time, you have like upregulation, downregulation, and you create so many more receptor sites for the, for example, for the carbs. She has this expression, I'm going to butcher it, but it's something like 1 bite is too much and 1,000 is never enough. So even just having a small amount, even if it's down to 20 grams or even 10, is still going to trigger that hedonic response in the brain where your brain goes, I need more carbs, because you have so many more receptor sites for it that even a small amount, it's the same with concept as with drugs, right? Like if you're an alcoholic or recovering like cocaine addict or heroin addict, you can't just have a little bit. Like you can't say, I'm going to have a teeny little bit of heroin. Yeah. It'll be good. Like it's like, because it'll have the same effect. It'll just create, all these cravings. And she has this great analogy of like a bird's nest. And it's like you open up the latch and suddenly all these little baby birds are in there going like more, more, more. And it makes sense. Like for me, going 0 and I have 0 cravings. Yeah. And it had to do the same thing with natural sweeteners. I had to give them up last spring because they were perpetuating cravings. And it's just even a small amount.
Yeah. I feel so bad for people who are maybe thinking to themselves, I want to be not so extreme with this. I want to be more, just a little bit towards the middle of the road and just lower the carbs a little bit. Yes. And they're making their lives harder, and they're prolonging their struggle to get fat adapted, and they're prolonging their struggle with all of these cravings, because it's like, I'd rather back it up all the way and then, start from 0 and then go back. Anybody you talk to with elimination and things like that, they're always going to say, just let's get rid of all of it and then add one thing at a time, see what happens,
Yes.
So I agree with that 100%. So there was that. And then there was just the performance benefits that I got right away were just unbelievable. And I don't know what to put that on. Like the carnitine, the creatine in the meat, first in the state in 3 different sprint rowing events, 5th in the country in one of them, and I'm top 10 in the country. Well, I just got knocked out of the top 10 in one of them. But in the 500 meter, the 100 meter sprint, and the 1 minute for distance, those are like what I do. And I'm just really, really good at them. And I would say that really fast events like sprint rows, things like, that are 1 to 2 minutes, and then long distance, you do very well with carnivore keto. I think that middle area is possibly where you have to try to figure out the right fueling, because there's some glycolytic and there's also some endurance and there's also some power. So those things are like, I'm not sure if you do as well, but I approach my training nowadays. I want to do everything. I'm not trying to. There was a time when I specialized and I did the powerlifting, and I was like, I want to be the strongest in the bench, squat, and deadlift. But now, like my typical workout is I start with rowing intervals that are kind of fast, and I mix those. Like while I'm resting, I'll do burpees or push-ups, and then I'll do a power movement like box jumps or explosive push-ups, and then I'll do a strength movement, which is like a heavy exercise, and then I'll do repetition, like a superset of like bodybuilding rep range, and then I'll always do conditioning at the end, whether it's slow, like walking on a incline, or it's actually another rowing workout. And all of these things are in different energy systems, and carnivore is powering all of them equally. And so I think it's awesome because there's no better proof of, because people get into these academic discussions about, well, this shouldn't be doing this. And I'm like, okay, just go to my Instagram, man. Look at what I do. I do this one, this one, this one. All of them are doing well. I feel great. And I'm happy because, that's going to hopefully turn people onto it. And we want to basically get as many people trying new things. It doesn't have to be carnivore, but trying different things and questioning what their current thoughts are as possible, because that's what happens. Everybody's like, and I have to always like breathe when I hear these questions. I have to be like, they don't know that this is like the 1,000th time I've heard this, so I have to be like, so every time they say, like, does the protein kick you out of ketosis, and does this? And I say, look, for me, it doesn't kick me out of ketosis. It may very well kick you out of ketosis. You should, try it. This is what I suggest you do, because I don't think it's helpful at all to just, attack them. The poor person really wants to know. And Think about how many times people are trying to like learn stuff. And then there's like, it's like talking points of keto. Don't let the protein go too high. Don't do this, don't do this. And then look at this and look at that. And then don't go any further. It's just like very glossing over the surface. And I just want people to think about these things more.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think it's all about testing yourself. Like when I talk about people's protein thresholds, like some are really high and some are really low, and it all depends on your personal insulin sensitivity. And I think it's just so important for people to test, because they can, really, if you're just testing, say, blood sugar, it's an inexpensive investment in your long-term health. Like a meter's $18, and just the blood glucose strips are not that much. If you think of what surgeries and drugs and things cost, it's just worth learning about yourself and your body and what that is for you. But like I was saying earlier, too much protein for me always kicked me out, and it always took me back to like a glucose fueled mode, and then without the carbs, it isn't. So like, I never would have thought that would be the case. If you had asked me, I was like, this for sure is going to kick me out again, and I'm going to have to maybe stay below my protein threshold. But the fact that I could go higher, is you get surprised when you try things and you learn. So now a lot of people that follow my community, I guess, a Ketogenic Girl, I was polling them a little bit in the last 2 days about what they're the most interested in learning about. And the first one was fat loss, with carnivore keto. And then the second one was inflammation, which we covered already. So I just wanted to know from you personally, like when you go through one of your cutting cycles and you're getting your body fat percentage down, you mentioned earlier that you went more to a keto diet. So whereas Dr. Ken Berry was saying that he cycles from keto to carnivore keto. So if you wanted to cut, like say for some competition or just for whatever reason, you suddenly wanted to go down to your lowest body fat percentage, would you do keto or carnivore?
Where I'm at now, I would do carnivore. That's what Brian is doing right now. Brian is like, he tells me the other day he has a goal for body fat and stuff by KetoCon. And I was like, does this mean I get to like give you macros and you're going to actually cut and stuff? He's like, no, I'm just going to eat meat. Because he's like, just eating meat alone, like it, and especially if you choose, and this all comes down to being fat adapted. If you're fat adapted, I think it definitely makes a lot of sense to cut fat. And plus, you're already in such a good place health wise that, like I said, you can get to a higher deficit quicker. And then as long as you don't go crazy and let the wheels fall off when you get to your goal weight, that's so important, is like once you reach that goal, think about before you get there, what's going to happen after. Think about what you're going to do.
So you still rely on like creating a caloric deficit?
I do now. So with keto, like when you're switching to keto, if you're not lean and you have a ton of weight to lose, chances are you're going to lose a ton of weight. But when you're trying to get to that final, 3 to 4% where you're leaning out, and it's really hard to get under 10%. So I think that if you're fat adapted, if you're relatively lean and you're in good health, I think that, you're cutting that fat is a cool way to do it because you get there quicker.
If you are a fat burner and you cut the fat, then you are going to burn more of your own body fat.
Yeah. And I think what most people confuse is they take it for granted and they automatically assume that they're a fat burner. And what if you're not a fat burner? What if you still have some issues that you're not fully fat adapted? Because if you do it from a just gloss over the top standpoint, it's like, okay, maybe in 3 months I'm fat adapted, but maybe it took you an actual year to get there, because it's like, okay, now I can cut the fat. And it's also because we get impatient, right? So we want to just...
Is there any danger in slowing your metabolism? Because my understanding is that if you cut calories, your metabolism is just going to slow to whatever your current caloric intake is.
Absolutely. I think there definitely is.
You found that 1-to-1 is probably the most effective in terms of just like feeling good while you're doing it, but then also getting great results.
And not too much of a deficit, because when you do the protein that too high, you do get too much of a deficit. And whether it's slowing down your metabolism or just like your energy in the gym goes down, it's too much of a good thing can become a bad thing.
I think like for me, what I found is that I can maintain calories. I don't have to cut calories to lose, but it's more the intermittent fasting. So like not grazing or snacking during the day and then just eating, like I usually do 2 meals a day or 1 meal a day, time restricted. So nothing like in between meals, and then just those meals. And then my body's able to be in a fat burning state the rest of the day. But if I cut calories, then my body's just going to slow the metabolism. And I like having a high metabolism. I'm able to burn fat being a fat burner that way, but I am playing around with the macros. And if you are really in a fat burning state, you are in nutritional ketosis, you can burn more of your body fat if you do cut some of the fat. So I think that is interesting, but you don't need to necessarily, I think, create like a big caloric deficit, or else you're just eating less food and, you're going to lose weight at the beginning, but yeah. And I think it's just interesting to hear your opinion on it because, you do this regularly, you're with your cutting and all that. But one of the last questions I want to ask you is just one thing I found kind of intense, I guess, with carnivore is that there really is a massive following of people who do carnivore for very specific health reasons. And a lot of it has to do with, in some cases, saving their health from extreme conditions, of really chronic, horrible inflammation and other conditions. And so there's a lot of people who are very passionate about it, very similar to the ketogenic community. But it seems to me like there's a version of keto carnivore, and I kind of got that a little bit from your graphic, and also Dr. Ken Berry said that he uses, coconut oil. Sounds to me if you're keto and you go carnivore and you're doing kind of keto carnivore, that it's kind of an adaptation or modification of carnivore that you can have, like I love to make avocado and walnut oil mayonnaise. And I do think MCT oils and coconut oil have incredible benefits for the brain. And when I posted your graphic, there was some feedback like very quickly on the Facebook where, someone was like, I've been doing zero carb or ZC for 10 years and, plant oils are not acceptable. And I was like, well, this is keto carnivore. It's not, it's an adaptation. So I understand people are very passionate about it, but it seems to me that keto carnivore is a little bit different. And you would know, having done it for a while and having this community around you of people who do it as well. Like, have you kind of found that there's a keto carnivore version?
Okay, I'm gonna save myself by quoting a friend of mine. Because if I didn't say it, then it's like, hey, I didn't say it. I have a friend of mine who's like, he's like, he was keto, and then I told him about carnivore, and he lost the most weight he's ever lost on carnivore, and his health is fantastic, and he's like sending me pictures of his face is so much smaller, everything, and he's like, you know what, man, I really love zero carb, I really love this carnivore thing. He's like, but I hate the people. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, these people in these groups, they're like Nazis. Like that's not zero carb. Look, I'm very aware of what is zero carb and what is not zero carb. I'm aware that a zero carb carnivore diet is an animal-based diet. We shouldn't be eating plant matter. There's issues. People have issues with, for instance, like coconut and coconut oil, like it has salicylates, which for some people triggers like an autoimmune response. And so I get that, But at the same time, it comes back to like speak from my own personal experience. And my own personal experience, I've removed all of these things and added them back in. And the ones that I'm well aware of, the ones that cause issues and the ones that don't cause issues. And so I do it's not like I'm having bushels and bushels. That's why I put them on the top. I think was it you who asked me about, do I just put that on the top for a reason, or do I try to minimize it? Based on like the typical food pyramid, you would want the least amount on the top?
I didn't personally ask about that, but I think I was just mentioning that in the graphic, there was no mention of like tuna or like lobster, those kind of things. And I was saying it's just all animal meat of any kind, right?
Yeah, like there's people in South Africa, you can eat okapi and you can have ostrich, and it's hard to fit all those things.
Like if it's an animal or it's an animal product, that's basically like the rules. And then the people who do zero carb or carnivore a little bit more strictly, they just don't have any plant anything, and that includes coconut oil or MCT oil. But it seems like keto carnivore could be kind of, I don't know, bastardization or just a modification or adaptation of it.
I'm sure some people are like, this is...
I get it. Because if I see someone posting a photo, with like plate full of carrots and beets or,
macros, right? Because it's less than 20.
My keto meal, like, here's my keto lunch. And I'm like, in my head, I react to it. I'm like, that's not keto to me, but I think we all have to be more flexible and understand that like we're all just in the end trying to find what works best for ourselves individually. And maybe that should be called low carb instead of keto. And that's why I think if we are adapting carnivore, it should be keto carnivore, because that's what it is really. Like it's not maybe the strict sense of zero carb or carnivore, because there's a difference,
exactly.
I think, with keto carnivore.
And then the other thing, I mean, when you look at it, it's like, okay, I totally understand. In my opinion, ingredients really, really matter. So there's never going to be a time where I consume a grain or where I consume like a sugary carb or any type of starchy carb or anything like that. But I think we're talking about coconut oil and MCT oil. We're talking about things that are very well proven to really help with all types of neurodegenerative diseases and all types of things. And so, not all of us like to drink black coffee. A lot of us, I still have my coffee that I was sipping on while we were talking. It has a quarter cup of unsweetened cashew milk. It has butter and it has MCT oil. And so there's one big X there, the cashew milk,
Yeah. I mean, you could do it with just butter or cream, but I mean, you're also making like keto carnivore work for you or carnivore work for you personally.
Exactly. And the other day I had my first like avocado in forever. And I was like, this is so sad that I have to go through this. Like I took a picture without the avocado on there, and then I took a picture with it, and I was like, what am I doing here? I'm like, am I really going to just lie and say that I didn't have avocado? I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's like not, there's no integrity in that. So I said something like, avocados are on sale. They're 69 cents. I love them. And then sure enough, like someone comments like, I thought you were zero carb. You're not zero carb anymore. And the person's not even zero carb, so it's like, what does it matter to you? Like, It works for me. I love avocados. Leave me alone.
To me, that sounds like to me that sounds like carnivore keto or keto carnivore. And I have a colleague. She's a fellow author for the same publisher as me, Martina Johansson, and she just did a month of carnivore, and she's like, I noticed these things from it, I noticed these things from it, but I need to add my avocados and oil, and coconut oil and MCT oil. So to me, that's a definition of someone who's really keto. We understand the benefits of these things, and you have to adapt it. I think there's a space for keto carnivore, and it's going to have MCT oil and avocados in it. Yeah. A little bit of cashew milk.
I don't think there's ever been a day, even in my whole experience, like there's been very short periods where I haven't consumed MCT oil every single day.
And it's just so beneficial, and you understand it so well, and how incredibly, healthy it is for the brain. The last quick question I want to ask you is just one comment that I think that comes to mind right away for people is some of the studies that have come out with eating red meat and cancer. So what do you say to people when you get that question over and over again?
Yeah, that's a really good one. And again, thank heavens for Dr. Eid, because she has an article. It's called, she actually has a talk on it as well. It says, "Who says meat causes cancer?" And when she's saying who, it's kind of like, she's really funny.
She's hilarious.
She's kind of like really funny. She's so funny, and the WHO is like the World Health Organization. And they remember it was like 2 years ago when they released that paper that people thought it was new information, and it was really from like the 70s or the 80s. It linked, red meat to cancer. And of course, first of all, again, not causation, correlation, terrible epidemiological data that is really poorly, it's not really very reliable. It's great for infectious diseases. It's really not good for diet and what it does, to our health. But that being said, the person who eats red meat in this study is going to be the person who eats red meat and also eats it with, on bread. And so there's all these other things. So the typical vegetarian is going to have all these different factors in there that help them. So they're not going to be probably consuming processed foods. They're going to be healthier. They're not going to smoke. They're not going to drink as much. They're probably going to do things like yoga and things that help their overall well-being.
They're health conscious.
Exactly. And so all these confounding variables, the day that somehow we get a head-to-head carnivore versus vegan or vegetarian study, that day is going to be just a groundbreaking day, because when we can compare head to head, it's going to be, because there is no, with respect to cancer, it's really with plant-based diets. It's not so much, and I'm copying Dr. Eid, so I'm going to say this. It's not me who made this up. It's not so much what you're eating, it's what you're not eating. If you're removing sugar from your diet, you're going to lower your cancer risk for sure, because, cancer survives on fermentation. It needs carbohydrate to live, and you're not going to allow it to grow and get worse. And you're going to have all these other different fantastic benefits that come from ketogenic diets, intermittent fasting, now I'm forgetting the process of programmed cell death, autophagy. Autophagy is one of those things that it really does nip it at the bud, because if you have any type of weird mutating cell and all of a sudden you stimulate autophagy with intermittent fasting or removing sugar from your diet, that cell gets scrapped, and then they use your body uses those raw materials.
You only got autophagy after like 3 days of full fasting, or can you also get it just with intermittent fasting?
Oh yeah, believe it or not, Dr. Rhonda Patrick has spoken that the benefits can start as little as 12 hours of restricting eating, which that kind of blows my mind.
Yeah.
And then you got to make sure that it's not my loose definition of fasting, which is like the fat fasting. Because if you're like me, again, it's like don't take away my fatty coffees. Like, don't tell me that I can't have a fatty coffee during my fast. But that's only because my type of fasting is not cancer preventative. If I intermittent fast, it's to keep insulin levels low. And we do know that there's data that suggests that insulin is not triggered at all. There's really no insulin response to like a fatty coffee. As long as the fat is not too high, you're not going to get an insulin response. But what she's talking about is, and she mentions like the Zero app. A lot of people use the Zero app. Your fast starts when you stop eating, and the minute you consume anything other than water, your fast ends. So she's saying a minimum of 12 hours, and that's what I think the data is from. It's data that's not saying, yeah, these people did intermittent fasting with bulletproof coffee. All of those things are going to come from removing the sugar. And so, of course, a vegetarian diet in that sense is going to, win out on a carnivore diet. But the carnivore diet's not a true carnivore diet. I'm a guy who eats meat, but I also drink a bunch of beer and I make poor lifestyle choices. So and then the other thing too is antioxidants.
Right. The correlation is that people who are eating a lot of red meat, they might also not be so health conscious and be drinking alcohol or smoking cigarettes or not exercising. And so it's a really, really good point. And I agree with you. We need to see actual studies comparing the two, because there are none to this date that state that a vegan diet is superior nutritionally. And I say that as a former vegan and vegetarian for 17 years.
Wow, 17? Oh, that's hardcore.
It's a really long time, most of my life that I ate that way. But for me personally, the way that I feel on keto is so incredible. And I'm really excited just to be dabbling a little bit with carnivore, learning about it, especially using it as an elimination protocol. I think it's really, really cool. So thank you so much for being here today, sharing all of your expertise and knowledge on it. And where can people look out for your next projects, some of the ones that you mentioned, and follow you?
So I'm KetoCounterCulture on Instagram and Facebook. And then my blog that's going to launch this month is www.fatfueled.family. And that's me, my wife, my kids, and you get to see what we do as a keto family. And
awesome.
All the other stuff that we do with homeschooling and peaceful parenting and all that hippie stuff that we do.
I love that. I love that. No, it sounds like you're on a mission, and I love your passion, and I'm really stoked to get to meet you guys in Austin really soon. That's next month. So it's coming really fast, and I hope that anyone who's in Austin or is making the trip down, it'll be so fun to catch your talk. And is your wife also speaking there?
Well, she's not going to speak. I don't know if she would be willing to. Next year, hopefully she will. I think, she probably she's definitely going to be obviously talking to people left and right. And this year, I'm not actually doing a talk like I did last year. I'm going to be on a panel, and then I'm going to do a Q&A session, because this year we're doing breakout sessions too. So we made room for different speakers this year. And I go where they tell me to go. So I'll be at the fitness panel, and then another Q&A at a breakout. So no, I'm really looking forward.
And those are the best. Those are the ones that I always go to, because you get 4 or 5 times the expertise in one room. So that's awesome. I can't wait to catch you guys there and catch up with that. And thank you all so much for tuning in today and listening to this episode. I'll post all the links that Danny mentioned in the show notes. And thanks so much for being here today, Danny.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here today, guys, and tuning in. I'm going to make this real quick because that was a long episode. We really did a deep dive into all things carnivore and keto carnivore. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And stay tuned for next week. I'm going to be doing another deep dive on my experience trying carnivore keto, my observations, the testing I did with blood glucose and ketones. If you want to learn more about doing a ketogenic diet, check out the 28-day Ketogenic Girl Challenge at ketogenicgirl.com. It's a 28-day program with meal plans, and it comes with exclusive membership in our Facebook group where I provide free support and coaching. And you can be in the group for as long as you like. We have an incredible community in there that provides a lot of feedback and support, and it's just the happiest place online. I love being in there with all of our challengers and challenge members, and be sure to check it out and send me any questions if you like on Facebook at the Ketogenic Girl. It's the best place to reach me if you have any questions about it at all. So thanks so much for tuning in. Have a fat-fueled week, and I'll catch you guys next time.